If you don't respect my opinions or farts, then's no future between us. Let's consider a divorce.
I'm growing tired and distrustful towards my husband who selfishly imposes his opinions. That night, I quietly accepted the suggestion of divorce brought up by him. He is looking at me with a smug smile. I really can't predict where our relationship is heading to. I, a 35-year-old housewife, have been living with Robert in a downtown apartment since we married 5 years ago in spring. Deep down, I've always wanted a child, but that dream has never come true. We once considered consulting a fertility specialist together. However, Robert insisted.
Even if we had a child, a quiet life with just the two of us wouldn't be so bad.
And so, we decided on that. After getting married, the passing of Robert's parents was a significant trial for us. Because of that, our plans for starting fertility treatments got postponed many times. Robert, literally a dominant husband, has that kind of personality. I originally started as his team member, and he was my boss at the company. Because of this, he can't help but point out small mistakes or misunderstandings. This pattern was already established before we became a couple and continued after marriage. Writing it this way might make him sound unpleasant. However, he has a very warm side too. For instance, times when I made a mistake at work or was about to give up in difficult situations while I was still his teammate. He didn't just scold me, he provided constructive and beneficial advice. I felt that he genuinely respected me. When my beloved grandfather passed away, he was there for me, comforting me with heartfelt words. That made us to start sharing deep affection, leading us to decide to marry. Afterward, I left my job and have been living as a full-time housewife, supporting Robert in his daily life.
Emmy, I'm home now. The train was crowded, and I'm a bit tired.
Thanks for working so hard late. Welcome home. Almost without exception, the antique wall clock points to 9 p.m. when Robert comes home every evening. Generally, the house is quiet by this time of night, but his return is the exception. He holds a senior position in the company and has a lot of responsibilities. You must have had a lot of meetings and work today? Well done. As I gently folded Robert's jacket and tie, I spoke to him. With weary steps, he headed to the sofa and sunk deeply into it. This has become a part of our daily routine. Seeing his exhausted face, I can feel the pressure and stress from his work. He must be so tired. I always wonder how I can make him feel better. He begins his meal in silence, but when faced with his favorite dishes, a faint smile occasionally breaks through his tired expression. Once he's done eating, he heads for a bath. I prepare towels and new clothes for him and start cleaning up after dinner. After his bath, he heads straight to the bedroom and collapses into bed. Since his promotion, he seems particularly drained. He supported me during my most challenging times, so I want to be there for him now. I lost my father when I was in middle school, and my mother right after I entered high school. After that, my kind grandfather took me in and raised me. It felt like my grandfather was my real parent, loving and nurturing me thoroughly. His warm smile healed me every day, and I always wanted to show my gratitude. Once I started working, I began saving money to take him on special vacations or dine out at his favorite restaurants. About 3 years into my job, my grandfather collapsed due to an illness and passed away. The memories of our time together didn't get off my head, and my pillow was soaked with tears every night. During that time, Robert, who was then my boss, noticed my feelings and comforted me with warm words. Touching his genuine kindness, I felt grateful. I thank him, and I want to live for him. On a sunny day off, our home phone suddenly rang.
Hey Emmy, it's me. Sorry it's been so long since I last called.
It was a call from Robert's younger brother. It really has been a while. How have you been? What brings you to call?
Actually, I have something to discuss with my brother. Can you get him for me?
Of course, just a moment. I relayed the message to Robert reading a magazine in the living room.
Hey, it's been a while. What's up? Is there a problem?
Robert, who had poker face until now, seemed to lighten up and even laugh during the conversation with his brother. His brother, 15 years younger than him, is like a child to Robert. Due to the age gap, Robert holds him dearly. I know he was delighted when Liam got married 2 years ago, but I sensed some concern in his voice.
That sounds tough. Are you okay?
Robert's voice was full of worry. Something was wrong, and I was staring at him.
I'll support you as your brother.
Robert went into a deeper conversation. What happened? Is something wrong?
My brother. It seems he's been laid off from his job.
What? Laid off? I was so shocked that I raised my voice accidentally.
A while ago, when I went out drinking with him, he did mention that things weren't going well at his company. But I never thought he'd be laid off.
Robert seemed to struggle with this news, sinking deeply into his chair. I felt sympathetic to his surprise. Liam is quiet by nature, unlike Robert. He has always accepted me as a real family member. Even when Robert occasionally made harsh comments at family gatherings.
Robert, that's a bit rude to Emmy.
He cared about me. Liam's wife is also very thoughtful. I truly respected their relationship. I never imagined Liam would suddenly get laid off. I wondered if there was any way we could help them. The thought of supporting Liam and his wife during this tough time weighed heavily on my heart. Is there any way we can help?
What exactly do you have in your mind?
Perhaps emotional support, job advice, or maybe temporary financial support. Isn't there a way we can help Liam and his wife?
You really don't understand the harshness of society. You, who don't face the world outside, can't comprehend the stress of someone who works every day, especially in a situation like this. It's irresponsible to say you want to help without giving it much thought. Your role is to support in silence.
His harsh words left me speechless. My intention to help seemed to have angered him. I'm here as your family, I said, holding back tears.
Liam is not your family. You and he are not related by blood.
His cold words hurt me deeply. I hadn't expected such a barrier between my husband and me. I hadn't expected him to be so distant afterward either. Until he returned, I pondered over his words and attitude. After that, he became even colder towards me.
What's with this meal? Can't you be considerate like Liam's wife? She's always keeping their house tidy and efficiently doing the chores.
I was taken aback by his sudden accusation. He had never criticized me like this before. I don't understand why you're getting mad at me. I was utterly shocked by his unexpected words. Our communication had been lacking recently, making it difficult to even meet each other's eyes. That day, Robert was organizing items from one corner of the room to the other. It felt different from the usual end-of-year cleaning. I wanted to ask what he was doing, but given our recent strained relationship, I refrained. Then, he spoke to me.
Hey, what are you doing? We should start preparing.
Prepare? For what?
We're handing this house over to Liam and his wife.
What? Why did you decide that on your own?
I told you to stay out of this. Don't defy me. You said you wanted to do something for Liam, remember?
I did, but giving up our house is a different matter. Where are we going to live after leaving this place?
We'll think about that later. Right now, supporting Liam is the priority. It's my duty as his elder brother.
It seemed Robert had made up his mind. I knew Liam wasn't the type to kick us out and take over our house. Robert handed me a piece of paper.
This conversation is over. Let's get a divorce and leave this place immediately.
It was a perfectly filled out divorce form. I was overwhelmed with mixed feelings. However, feeling the distance between us lately, I also felt some relief. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new path for me. I picked up the scattered divorce papers from the floor and filled them out, taking deep breaths. Robert watched with a smug expression, but I could tell it was superficial. When I finished, I asked a crucial question. Do you think you own this house?
What?
This house and land I inherited from my grandfather, where I spent my childhood with him. Do you remember that? Robert's face turned strange, and his eyes widened. How do you plan to give away a property in my name to someone else? While bewildered by my question, he seemed desperately searching for words.
Well.
Remember how you moved into my house casually because your rent was too high before we got married? And I've always paid the property taxes and various expenses for this house and land. You never contributed to those costs, did you?
Sorry. That is.
Robert was at a loss for words. Maybe we should end this.
This isn't something to conclude in a split second.
Should I be the only one to stay calm? Have you ever considered how selfish you are? Bringing up a divorce out of the blue? All the emotions and grievances I had kept inside started to pour out. How much time had we spent together? How much had we valued our relationship? But given the recent events, it might have been just my one-sided perception. I never imagined our relationship would end like this.
Emmy, I need you to calm down and listen. Given how things have turned out, there might be some underlying issues. I want to carefully consider our positions.
If you wanted to stay, why didn't you say so from the start? You're the one who suggested the divorce, right? Please understand how I feel now. The trust and bond I believed in vanished in an instant. Saying that, I held the meticulously written divorce papers in my hands. Today is Sunday, so the city office is closed. I plan to proceed with the process tomorrow. Robert couldn't accept the situation and wandered around the living room, his eyes red.
I never imagined it would come to this.
He murmured in a soft voice. This house is mine, so I want you to pack up and leave as soon as possible. Now that our relationship has ended, it's difficult for both of us to coexist in this small space. It took some time to persuade Robert to finally leave. In my heart, he was already a thing of the past. No need for words of gratitude or any special considerations. Eventually, Robert left the house with a heavy step. I watched his back intently. News of our divorce reached Robert's workplace rather quickly. He seemed uncomfortable there. Detailed rumors about the reasons for our divorce and Robert's behavior during our married life spread throughout his workplace. Thinking about his position, he honestly answered when questioned by his colleagues and teammates. Some days after the divorce, I was leaving a real estate agency after looking for a new place when I unexpectedly locked eyes with someone. His gaze held a hint of obsession, as if he had been waiting for me all along. A chill ran down my spine. I started walking, trying to keep my ex-husband out of sight, but he followed. Reluctantly, I asked what he wanted, and he confronted me with words I never expected.
I never told you, but I hated and resented you.
What? Why? Taken aback by the sudden confession, I raised my voice in surprise. That's when I learned that he had been thinking I was responsible for Liam's layoff. In fact, since we got married, there had been a series of unfortunate events like the death of Robert's father and Robert himself breaking his leg. The health condition never improved, and Robert's father had always been frail. Robert's broken leg was a result of him drinking excessively. Despite all this, Robert seemed to have felt that I was the cause of all the troubles. So, you thought that I brought misfortune, and you resented me for that. Knowing this fact, I was shocked and appalled by Robert's hasty judgment, blaming others without understanding the context and the truth. I truly wondered why he works as a leader in his company, the boss I once admired. When did he change so much? Thinking back to when I was married to him, it feels like my heart is being squeezed.
But Emmy, the truth is, even after we broke up, bad things continued to happen around me.
What kind of misfortune? I looked with keen interest, and Robert slowly rolled up his sleeves to show me.
Actually, 3 months ago, there was a massive fire in the apartment I was living in. Not only that, I lost my wallet in the city, made a significant mistake at work, and haven't heard from Liam at all. I'm really worried.
So you're saying misfortunes didn't stop even after our divorce? To be honest, I can't deeply sympathize with that because those incidents are your responsibility, and they have nothing to do with me.
Emmy, I'm begging you. I want you to come back to me. I'm genuinely struggling without you by my side. Look, we overcame so many challenges as a couple. Remember when you were working full-time? I supported you, right? And when your grandfather passed away, I did my best to support you, didn't I?
How about you stop blaming others for your problems? Shouldn't you reflect deeply on your actions and past choices to find the root cause? Before you accuse others, it's crucial to reflect on your own actions. With those words, I started walking away from his line of sight.
Emmy, wait. Let's talk one more time. Emmy.
I could hear my ex-husband's pleading voice from behind, but I didn't stop and kept walking forward. A few weeks later, I received a surprising message from Liam.
Emmy, I used to call you sister-in-law, but that's not the case now, right? I have something to tell you about my brother.
According to the information from Liam, when Robert suddenly offered his house to Liam, it seemed to be a one-sided decision by Robert.
My brother has always been concerned about how others view him, and that characteristic often led to issues. We as a couple sincerely apologize for his disrespectful attitude towards you.
I felt that Liam was genuinely a kind-hearted person. I couldn't help but wonder why there was such a difference in character within the same family.
To be honest, I feel that your decision to divorce was for the best. I genuinely wish for your happiness in the future.
Thank you for saying that. I genuinely appreciate it. Fortunately, Liam received a new job offer and found a stable way to support himself.
I've been thinking lately, and I've decided to distance myself from my brother for a while.
There seemed to be a strained relationship between Liam and his brother for various reasons. Liam appeared to be considering reducing his interactions with his ex-brother-in-law gradually after the divorce, and even possibly weakening his bond with his most trusted younger brother. It's probably something Robert hadn't anticipated. I genuinely hope he takes a moment to reflect deeply on his past choices and actions. More than that, I feel that it's necessary to completely sever ties from his life and future. That day, when I had an unexpected reunion with Robert, I was in the process of renting out my grandfather's cherished house for another family to live in. I can't imagine letting go of the house filled with countless memories I shared with my grandfather. I decided to get a new phone number, choose a new place to live, and completely sever ties with Robert. I'm only 35 years old. A new chapter in my life is about to begin.
I'm responsible for this. Have fun. I was brought back to reality by Michael's loud voice and its acrid alcohol odor. I gently turned to look at Sophia. Something seemed to snap within of me at that very instant. Sophia, the courageous, unwavering girl who always made an effort to hide her weakness, is crying. I became enraged after seeing that scene. How about it? This is high-end champagne. It should be an honor for you to fully enjoy it. I was about to blow out with anger, but Michael was completely unaware and continued to spew such drivel. My emotions were only heightened by the fact that Sophia looked like my late wife, and I eventually burst into tears like never before. The contract is off. David is my name. My 65th birthday was this year. My body doesn't move the way I want it to, and I frequently feel older than I did when I was younger. I haven't given up on civilization entirely yet, though. Technically, I am the chairman of a corporation, but I am more of a figurehead, because my son is now the president and the real decision-maker. It all started while I was a college student. Let's create a company that brings smiles to everyone's faces. It began with a very nebulous concept, no specific objectives, just excitement. In the past, it was uncommon to see high school students launch businesses and rise to the position of CEO. With a few classmates, the business was haphazardly started. Before I knew it, we had sponsors and were eventually incorporated. I had part-time jobs, but I could only make so much money as a student. I was also unable to spend much freely because I had to support my family. My upbringing gave me the urge to make everyone happy. I was raised by a single mother, which was unusual at the time, and came from a low-income household. My mother would always say, "No matter how tough things get, keep smiling and someday things will get better," even though I had to overcome innumerable obstacles. She thought that thinking negatively would draw in more negativity, resulting in a vicious cycle from which it would be difficult to break. She advised me to always have a grin on my face, especially in difficult situations, even though it sounded a little spiritual. My situation gradually improved. Thanks to interest-free student loans, I was able to enroll in college and attend continuously for 4 years. Even my part-time employment were enjoyable. I think that maintaining my optimism has given me the opportunities I have now. Although my mother is no longer with us, I have no doubt that she is in heaven, keeping watch over me and her grandkids. It still amazes me that the business has expanded into a huge enterprise with billions of dollars in income. I never wake up from what feels like an eternal dream. As I get older, I've retired from the front lines and live a quiet life with my spouse. My children are a girl and a son. This year, my daughter, who was born when I was 40, is 25, and my son is 35. Dad, I'm heading to work. Just as I returned home, my daughter Sophia was heading out for her job. Without going into too much detail, Sophia doesn't work during the day, but heads out for a part-time job at night. People might have their opinions, but this is the path Sophia, my wife, and I have agreed on. No matter what others say, I want Sophia to follow the path she believes in, as long as it doesn't involve breaking the law. Supporting that is a parent's duty. These days, the warmer weather brings more weird people out, so be careful. Dad, how old do you think I am? But thanks. I'm off. With a dazzling smile, Sophia disappeared into the night. When I stepped inside, a fresh fragrance greeted me. I glanced toward the source of the scent and saw a vase filled with colorful flowers. Apparently, Sophia had stopped by a flower shop and bought them on a whim. Sophia carries so much on her shoulders for her age. With her natural cheerfulness, she never shows weakness to others, always smiling and kind. That's why I had to worry about her sometimes. Well, worrying about it won't change anything. Sophia is simply living life the way she wants, and all we can do is step back and watch over her. I said this to my wife, who greeted me at the door. She responded with the same gentle smile Sophia often had. One day, something unexpected happened. I got a call from Michael, an old classmate. "You're coming, right?" Yeah, shiver. Count me in." I was startled when our rarely used landline blurted loudly. To my surprise, it was an invitation to a class reunion, and to top it off, the organizer was none other than Michael. That alone sapped me of any enthusiasm. Michael was a former classmate who went to the same schools as me from elementary through high school. Unlike me, Michael came from a wealthy family and constantly flaunted it, which annoyed everyone around him. though I doubt he ever realized how irritating he was. Suddenly, memories from high school came flooding back. It was September of our senior year, still warm, but not unbearably so, unlike today's extended summers. You're not seriously planning to attend such a mediocre university, are you? I went to a public high school known for its academic rigor. Being from a low-income family, I couldn't afford private schools, so I aimed for the best public school in the area. Somehow, Michael ended up there too. Given his family's wealth, he could have easily attended a prestigious private school. But the reason Michael ended up in the same school as me was simple. I've been competing with you since middle school, and now, at the very end, you're just giving up. Apparently, Michael had decided I was his rival. Not to brag, but I was pretty good academically, always ranking in the top 3 out of nearly 200 students in middle school. People even suggested I could get a scholarship to a private school. But even with a scholarship, there would still be other expenses, and I didn't want to burden my mother further. Public school was my only option. From the start, I thought Michael and I would part ways after middle school, so I was shocked when he ended up at the same high school. When I decided to pursue a language-focused university, Michael was completely bewildered. I'm going to go to a place where I can learn how to run a business. I have a dream to be a president in the future. What does it matter if I can speak other languages? Nowadays, if I can speak Japanese, my mother tongue, that's all that matters. At the time, globalization wasn't as advanced as it is now, so he had a point. But now, I'm glad I chose to study languages in an environment where I could focus on them. Michael and I lost touch after our university applications and hadn't spoken until now. At the age of 65, he must have gotten my home phone number from a mutual acquaintance. By this age, most people had retired or were using reemployment programs, so the idea was to gather and reminisce about life. On the day of the reunion, the scene before me was absurd. Michael, drunk, rambled on about the past, mocking me in the process. This guy went to some run-of-the-mill university, wasted 4 years playing around, then got married to a woman 8 years younger at 30, and now here I am, watching the downfall of my former rival. It's sad, really, as Michael said. My wife is much younger than me and still actively working. He cracked crude jokes about my taste in women, laughing obnoxiously. Meanwhile, he boasted endlessly about running his own company. I've hit the peak of my life. Hey, do you know this artist? I've been following them on video platforms since they debuted. His conversations jumped from one topic to another, leaving everyone struggling to keep up. Michael's self-centered rambling turned the reunion into his personal bragging session, and everyone else was visibly put off. Michael, that's enough. It's getting late. Let's wrap this up, I finally said. Unsurprisingly, he grumbled about me taking charge, but my words prompted others to agree it was time to leave. The chaotic reunion came to an end. Not long after, I unexpectedly ran into Michael again in the hallway of a certain company. The company in question turned out to be the one where Michael served as CEO. The moment he saw me, he smirked. "What's this? Are you working here as a janitor because you're out of money?" Honestly, if you'd just gone to an elite university like I did, you wouldn't have ended up with such a pathetic life. Do you even realize how much potential you wasted? His provocative tone irritated me slightly, but we were both 65. There was no point in engaging in petty arguments at this stage of life, so I chose to ignore him. This seemed to bother him as he fell in step beside me, keeping pace as I walked away. "Hey, don't you dare ignore me. The nerve of a janitor to snub me. Have you forgotten that my company contracts work from yours? Or maybe since you're just a temp worker, you wouldn't even know about that." He burst out laughing, thoroughly enjoying himself. If the cleaning staff were employees of my company, he might have known better. But since the cleaning service was outsourced, he assumed I was one of the cleaners, looking down on me all the while. I couldn't help but feel exasperated, and my initial anger dissipated entirely. Anger, I believe, is a waste of energy. If there's time to be angry, it's better to use that energy rationally. This is just my philosophy, of course. But talking to Michael was pointless. He'd only hurl more insults, so I decided to keep ignoring him. However, Michael's short temper reached its limit, and he yelled, You're so infuriating." With that, he deliberately kicked over a bucket that a real janitor had left nearby. The water spilled all over me, soaking my suit. "Hey, that's enough." I voiced my protest briefly, to which Michael nonchalantly replied, "Well, if you're a janitor, you can clean it up yourself. Oh, and if the hallway stays wet, I'll cancel the contract. Anyway, I'm busy, so I'm out." After spouting his nonsense, he stepped into the elevator without a second glance. What a disaster. I sighed as I looked down at my soaked suit. I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, I saw Sophia standing there. "Dad, what happened?" "Your suit is completely drenched." "Sophia, why are you here?" "I just had some errands to run. Never mind about me." "Here, let me help you dry off." Sophia pulled a neat handkerchief from her bag and started wiping my suit. "But," I gently stopped her. "That handkerchief was a birthday gift from your mother, wasn't it? The water came from that bucket. It's not clean. Besides, your clothes might get dirty. Don't worry. I always carry a spare suit for situations like this." At that moment, my secretary appeared. "Oh, your secretary. He's quite young, isn't he?" "Yes, he just graduated from high school." My secretary, who had been promoted to this role immediately after entering the workforce, quickly assessed the situation and turned on his heel to fetch a new suit. While he still had much to learn, his ability to absorb information and adapt quickly allowed him to pick up skills rapidly. It was what you'd call a potential hire. I didn't view him through a prejudice lens. I simply recognized the innate qualities he possessed and believed he could grow into an extraordinary asset in the future. Working as the secretary to a chairman who has stepped back from the front lines might not provide many learning opportunities. Nevertheless, I changed into the suit he brought back and managed to make it to my next engagement on time. Sophia, having finished her errand, mentioned that we should all have dinner together as a family of 4 for the first time in a long while. "Dad, you and my brother work too much," Sophia said. "Well, I'm one thing, but your brother is young and carries the responsibility of many lives as the head of the company. Still, even he needs to take breaks sometimes." It was a rare and enjoyable evening spent together as a family, but the very next day, my phone rang. "Tonight? That's pretty short notice." "Oh, I see. Declining isn't an option." "All right, let them know I'll attend." After hanging up the phone with my secretary, I let out a sigh. A last-minute dinner with the client's CEO had been scheduled for 7:00 p.m. that evening. Apparently, it was a spur-of-the-moment idea on their part. How incredibly rude. The secretary, caught in a difficult position, looked relieved when I agreed to attend the dinner, albeit reluctantly. Normally, I would have declined outright, but given who was involved, I couldn't afford to do so. The designated restaurant was a high-end establishment. When Michael saw me enter, his excess was one of surprise. "What? You work at this company? Let me guess, you must have sweet-talked your way into an executive position. People like you, who are useless, should just get out of the company already. I hear the CEO is a young guy. Until he gets here, you can keep me company." It seemed Michael was unaware that I was the chairman. Unlike me, who built my company from scratch, Michael had taken over as CEO a few years ago when his father handed over the reins. Since his company had only been a client of ours for about a year, it wasn't surprising that he didn't know my position. Still, it struck me as a lack of basic research on his part. The employees around me looked concerned, but I reassured them, "No, it's fine. Don't say anything. He's an acquaintance of mine, after all. I'll handle it." Just believe it for now. My son was delayed due to urgent matters and wouldn't be able to join for another 30 minutes. That left me to hold the fort for the time being. As planned, the drinks and core meals began arriving at the table, and then the champagne that Michael had specifically ordered was brought to the table by none other than Sophia. Sophia, you work here. I knew she worked nights at a high-end restaurant, but I never imagined it would be this one. Typically dressed casually in t-shirts and jeans, Sophia looked professional and polished in her uniform. When our eyes met, she smiled faintly. Welcome, Dad. Michael didn't miss that remark. Despite spending the evening boasting to his subordinates and making them visibly uncomfortable, he immediately turned his attention to Sophia. Well, so your daughter works here, huh? Figures. With a failure of a father like you, it's no wonder his child isn't much better. He spouted this baseless insult, and Sophia froze, her eyes wide in disbelief as she stared at him. I too was momentarily at a loss for words, stunned that he would suddenly demean my daughter like that. Sensing an opportunity, Michael's mouth kept running. Now that I look closely, she's quite pretty, isn't she? Great figure, too. Dress her in something nice, and she'd be stunning. How about it? Why not marry her off to my eldest son? He's overseas right now, but if he gets married, it'll keep him from wandering around and bring him back to the U.S. What an unbelievably rude thing to say. In this day and age, making comments about a woman's appearance like that is generally seen as inappropriate. On top of that, suggesting she marry his eldest son without her input is completely unacceptable. What really infuriated me was that he wasn't considering Sophia's happiness. He was just trying to use her as a way to keep his son tied down in the U.S. Anger is a waste of energy. That's what I've always believed. But for the first time in a long while, I could feel myself being overtaken by that very emotion. Looking at Sophia's bewildered and hurt expression, I found it impossible to stay calm. I tried to hold back, but Michael delivered the final blow. What's with that look? Apparently, Sophia's silence annoyed him. The smug grin he had been wearing moments earlier disappeared, replaced by sudden anger. Seriously, young women these days are so useless. Maybe it's time someone taught you some respect. Hey, hand me that champagne. To my shock, Michael snatched the expensive champagne and poured it over Sophia's head. The liquid dripped from her hair, falling to the floor in slow motion, as if time itself had paused. This one's on me. Enjoy it. The strong stench of alcohol and Michael's booming voice jolted me back to my senses. Slowly, I turned my gaze towards Sophia. At that moment, it felt like something inside me snapped. Sophia is crying. That brave, steadfast daughter of mine, who always tried not to show any weakness, is crying. That sight ignited the flames of anger deep within me. How is it? It's premium champagne. You should be honored to experience it with your whole body, right? Michael, oblivious to my simmering rage, continued his shameless tirade. The fact that Sophia bore an uncanny resemblance to my late wife only added fuel to the fire. I finally erupted in a way I never had before. The contract is off. What? What are you suddenly talking about? There's no way you have the authority to do that. Inside, I felt a fiery heat coursing through me, and why wouldn't I? With all those emotions erupting inside me, it was only natural. Still, years of experience had taught me that losing my temper wasn't dignified, so I resolved to handle the situation with as much composure as I could muster. Whether or not an abrupt contract termination counts as calm was debatable, but I at least intended to maintain the decorum of an honorary chairman. I may have stepped back from the front lines, but that doesn't mean I've relinquished my authority. My son, the current president, is still a newcomer to management. As the former president, I continue to guide him when necessary, which gives me the right to make decisions in matters like this. I've judged it impossible to continue our partnership with a company whose leader behaves so disgracefully. Michael's confusion was evident, but one of his subordinates hurriedly explained the situation. In an instant, Michael's face paled. "You're the honorary chairman of a company with annual revenue exceeding 500 million. I had no idea. You think you can bluff your way out of this?" "That won't work on me," I said sharply, cutting off his stammered excuses. Michael fell silent. His employees likely knew of my position, but lacked the courage to interrupt his incessant monologue to tell them. The tension in the room was palpable. I called over the restaurant manager, who had been nervously hovering nearby, and asked him to take care of Sophia. After confirming that Sophia had left the scene, I turned back to Michael. "You've crossed a line. As a result, you've jeopardized a valuable business relationship. While I try to keep personal matters out of my work, what you did today cannot be overlooked. Reflect on your behavior as a person." As I stood to leave, Michael grabbed my hand in a panic and began pleading. "Wait, no. I misunderstood the situation." "Misunderstood?" I asked, glaring at him. "What excuse do you think will work now?" Under my gaze, Michael shrank back, his body trembling slightly. Realizing the irreparable damage to his company if the contract was voided, he forced a strained smile and began to explain himself. I thought you were just some assistant or something. I didn't think someone like you could be an executive. So, I was just putting on an act." "So let me get this straight," I replied, my voice sharp. "You assumed I was just someone's assistant, and because of that, you thought it was acceptable to humiliate my daughter, thinking she was merely a part-time worker? Is that it? I'm deeply disappointed in you." Michael had no response. It's true that Sophia is a part-time worker here. She has other responsibilities during the day, so she isn't a full-time employee. But Michael decided to look down on her and treated her with complete disrespect. Such behavior is utterly inexcusable. Michael's face grew paler, and his body trembled even more. "Please forgive me. I didn't mean it." I glanced at Michael as he begged for forgiveness, but said nothing and left the restaurant. Outside, my secretary was waiting and asked what had happened. After explaining, he looked utterly dejected. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "This isn't something you need to feel bad about or apologize for. This is entirely Michael's fault, and that's all there is to it. Now, let's head back to the office. We need to review our future dealings with his company." The secretary nodded quietly and hurried off to get the car. Just then, Sophia approached me, looking distressed. "Dad, I'm so sorry this whole mess happened because of me. I can't believe I caused so much trouble and cried like that. It was so embarrassing. I'm really sorry." She apologized repeatedly, blaming herself. Though her tears had stopped, her eyes were red from rubbing them. Seeing her like that, my anger began to boil again, so I took a deep breath to calm myself. "Sophia, don't cry anymore," I said gently, wiping her tears away. "Don't cry. You're not at fault. More importantly, you must be feeling terrible after having alcohol pour on you when you don't even like it. I spoke to the manager, so you should call it a day and head home." But Sophia, ever the responsible one, shook her head. "No, it's fine. Thank you for worrying about me, Dad, but the man from earlier is leaving anyway. I'll finish my shift properly and then head home. See you later," Sophia said softly as she returned to the restaurant. The next day, as expected, Michael came to our office. I had already explained everything to my son, telling him to focus on his responsibilities while I handled the aftermath with Michael. In other words, it was up to me to deal with him. "I'm truly sorry for what happened yesterday. I wasn't myself at the time. I know an apology can't fix this, but I really am sorry," Michael said, appearing regretful. While he seemed genuinely apologetic, my anger was far from subsiding. After all, Sophia had ended up leaving work early due to illness after the incident. She had endured having alcohol poured over her head despite her aversion to it. It must have pushed her to her limit, When the restaurant manager called to inform me, I rushed to pick her up, only to find her pale and in tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Sophia kept apologizing repeatedly in the car, barely managing to hold back her nausea. Her kind heart made her feel guilty for the trouble she thought she had caused, even though she was the victim. Michael's behavior had been completely out of line from the start. Inviting someone to dinner on such short notice was already rude, but his actions sealed the deal. I had no intention of letting him off the hook. "An apology doesn't erase what happened yesterday," I said firmly. "I know that. It's just, I didn't realize you were the honorary chairman of such a major company. If I had known," Michael stammered. My eyebrow twitched. It felt like he was apologizing because of my title, and that only solidified my resolve to hold him accountable. "Michael, I understand what you're saying. I'll accept your apology for now, but my decision on the contract remains unchanged. Surely you understand that trust is the foundation of any agreement. You destroyed that trust with your actions." Michael, seemingly aware of his mistake, slumped his shoulders and left the office. This was the right decision, but I also felt that he owed Sophia a direct apology. Just as I was thinking this, my secretary called to inform me that someone had come to see me. It turned out to be Sophia. "Dad, I have a favor to ask. Is that promise from before still valid?" Sophia asked hesitantly. The promise she was referring to was likely from 3 years ago, when Sophia turned 22 and graduated from college. At the time, I had asked her if there was anything she wanted as a graduation gift. "Go ahead, tell me what you'd like," I had said. But Sophia, smiling, had shaken her head. "No, it's fine. Just the thought means so much to me. Besides, you covered all my tuition and living expenses for 4 years of college, didn't you? Honestly, I feel like you've already done more than enough." She had always been modest and hesitant to ask for anything. At the time, the company was going through a rough patch due to the economic downturn and global instability, which had affected our profits. That may have made Sophia even more considerate and reluctant to ask for anything. "Well then, if you ever think of something you'd like, just let me know," I had said when I made the offer. Sophia had simply replied, "Maybe someday," and never brought it up again. Instead, she used her first paycheck to buy us gifts or surprised us with a trip for just the two of us. It often feels like, as parents, we think we're giving, but in reality, we're the ones always receiving from her. Through everything, Sophia had never asked me for anything until now. At this moment, she finally decided to take me up on that long-forgotten promise. "I just don't want to see you and him at odds like this," she said quietly. Before I could ask what she meant, she pulled something out of her bag. "Yesterday, when I got in your car, I found this on the back seat. This guy, he's the one, right?" She showed me a photograph, and I was momentarily speechless. It was a picture of me with friends from our childhood, those I had shared my school days with. It showed me with 2 childhood friends. "Ah, you found it in the back seat?" I asked, a bit surprised. Actually, when I heard about the reunion, I felt a bit nostalgic and pulled out some old photos. This one is my favorite. There's been a lot between him and me," she continued, but I chuckled, realizing how stubborn I'd become with age. The truth was, I didn't dislike Michael. His constant need to compete with me had been annoying at times, but deep down, he wasn't a bad person. Of course, what happened yesterday was unforgivable, but the apology Michael gave earlier seemed genuine. He truly seemed to regret his actions. I couldn't bring myself to forgive him immediately, though, as I was still grappling with my feelings. "Fine, Sophia, do as you wish," I finally said. Sophia's face lit up with a bright smile as if the tears from yesterday had never happened. "Thank you. All right, Dad. I'll be counting on you for this. Leave it to me." Having said everything she wanted, Sophia left, her demeanor cheerful and light. But just as I thought she was gone, she returned. Oh, I almost forgot the flowers. Why don't you put them in the CEO's office? Wait here. I'll go get them. 30 minutes later, Sophia came back holding the same flowers she had once placed in our entryway. Their pleasant fragrance seemed to cleanse the tense atmosphere in the room. This time, Sophia truly left for the day. As I carried on with my usual tasks, my secretary returned from his errands. The moment he stepped into the room, he immediately noticed the flowers. Oh, these. My daughter gave them to me. Is something bothering you? Do they seem out of place? I asked. He paused thoughtfully for a moment before shaking his head with a smile and saying, "Must have just been my imagination." A few days later, I called Michael in for a discussion of the recent events. When he arrived, he looked visibly worn out, as if weighed down by everything happening around him. What now? Are you planning to lecture me again? I get it already. I've done something irreversible. I underestimated you and insulted your daughter. And now my company is taking a massive hit. I'm done with all this. But if you still feel the need to lecture me. Before he could finish, I cut him off. I'm not the kind of man to dwell on the past and harp on old grievances. But that doesn't mean I've completely let go of my anger. The thing I can't forgive is how you insulted my daughter. So I've decided to make it up to her in my own way. If you truly regret your actions, then shut up and join me for a meal. Michael frowned, clearly confused. I wasn't reversing the canceled contract, nor was I planning to scold him further. Instead, I had suddenly suggested having a meal together, leaving Michael puzzled about my intentions. A month later, we met at a small bar I frequented. The bar was dimly lit, with a long counter table and just 2 small tables for 4. It was my favorite spot, a cozy hidden gem of a place. Tonight's on me. Order whatever you like. Did you eat something weird or what? Given how tense things had been between us until recently, my sudden offer of a drink made the furrow in Michael's brow deepen even further. Still, he couldn't seem to refuse, so he casually ordered a draft beer. Taking a sip, he let out an exclamation of surprise. What is this? It's so crisp and easy to drink. Good, isn't it? I replied. I heard you've been drinking champagne in high-end establishments. Let me tell you, even a simple beer in a bar like this can be excellent. Noticing that Michael wasn't usually a fan of beer, the bartender added ice cubes to his glass. If you use pure ice, it doesn't dilute the beer too quickly, keeping the taste intact. Plus, for those who aren't fond of beer, the slight dilution as the ice melts makes it smoother to drink. While purists might argue against putting ice in beer, this way of drinking has its merits, doesn't it? I said, turning to the bartender, who responded with a smile. Despite Michael's refined palate, the food here suited him well, and he ate with genuine enjoyment. To think I've lived 65 years without tasting something this good, except for my mom's cooking, of course, he said, his tone softened by the alcohol. It was as if the grim personality he'd shown recently had vanished, and the Michael I remembered from our younger days had returned. The reason I could never truly hate Michael, even to the very end, was probably because of the memories we shared from our elementary school days. Back then, we didn't compete over grades or accomplishments. It was silly things like who could catch the most beetles or stay underwater the longest. Michael, born into a wealthy family and destined to become a CEO, gradually grew fixated on grades and status as we got older. Our paths began to diverge in middle school, but tonight's atmosphere felt like a throwback to those carefree summers of elementary school. A while later, the lights in the bar grew slightly brighter. Is something going on? Michael asked. Yes. The bartender here loves music and often uses his connections to bring in performers. Sometimes it's well-known artists, and other times it's up-and-coming singers. Tonight, there's a live acoustic performance by a singer-songwriter. Michael's expression shifted suddenly at the mention of this. As expected, I feigned ignorance, though I was already piecing it all together. Before long, the star of the evening appeared. Her face was concealed, keeping her identity a mystery. She picked up what appeared to be her favorite acoustic guitar and began to play. At that moment, Michael let out a small ah. I chuckled and said, "You're a fan of hers, aren't you? At the reunion, you couldn't stop talking about how much her music inspires you and lifts your spirits. Your enthusiasm was so intense that everyone just laughed it off, but it was clear how much you admired her." I approached the bar's owner with a suggestion. If the singer had any free time, she could perform here. The owner, with whom I've had over a decade of friendship, readily agreed. Although the artist was still relatively unknown, her crystal-clear voice and the soothing tones of her acoustic guitar created perfect harmony. Even customers who had never seen her before were completely captivated by her performance. After performing a few songs, she finished her set, and the room erupted in applause. At that moment, she removed her mask, and Michael froze in shock. "Good evening, it's been a while," she said. The mysterious artist was none other than my daughter, Sophia. After graduating college, Sophia had started a job but left within a year. At first, I worried, wondering why someone as dedicated as Sophia would leave so soon. Her reason, however, was anything but negative. "Dad, I've always wanted to be an artist. My dream is to perform at Budokan with just my acoustic guitar. I know it sounds reckless, but it's something I truly want to achieve," she had told me. She also revealed something else. She had a fiancé at the time. He was just her boyfriend, but they had already promised to marry. Unfortunately, her fiancé, Ryan, had been diagnosed with a rare illness that left him partially blind and physically impaired. He was undergoing rehabilitation, unable to leave the hospital until he regained basic mobility. Sophia's dream of becoming an artist was fueled by his encouragement. He had praised her voice and her guitar playing, which she had started as a hobby. She wanted to inspire him in return. No matter what obstacles stand in his way, Ryan never gives up hope, even in life-threatening situations. He underwent risky surgeries and survived. He's cheering me on from his hospital room, so I'm determined to perform at Budokan for him and for myself. Sophia's powerful words resonated with the audience, who cheered her on enthusiastically. She left the stage amidst applause, and soon joined us at our table. Michael, who had been visibly shaken, finally snapped out of it and bowed his head deeply. "I'm so sorry for what I said and did. I know an apology isn't enough, but still," he said. Sophia forgave him without hesitation. "Everyone makes mistakes. I understand you've been dealing with a lot of stress, especially with your son's sudden illness. Haven't you?" "Wait, that story. Could it be?" Michael stammered. "Yes," Sophia said. "My fiancé was none other than Michael's second son, Ryan. My eldest son has been aimlessly wandering abroad, so I decided my second son, Ryan, would take over the company. But one day, he fell seriously ill. At one point, they told us his condition was critical. I had been living a life where I neglected my family entirely," Michael admitted. As a result, his wife and children had distanced themselves from him, and it was only then that he realized the foolishness of his choices. Even so, his second son, Ryan, was the only one who reached out to him. He was such a kind-hearted boy. Thanks to him, I was able to rebuild my life with my family. And yet, it was right after this that Ryan's illness was discovered, and I began to lose my emotional stability. He had thought that securing a major contract with my company would ensure the future of his business. However, as he tried to find and train a new successor, his mismanagement drove employees to resign in droves. I took a deep breath and offered a suggestion. "Your company was struggling from the start, wasn't it? Actually, your youngest son came to me directly about this." "My youngest? Why bring him up now?" "Just listen," I said, signaling my secretary, who entered the room with a bow. "Why are you here? Michael asked in disbelief. He insisted, saying, I only have a high school diploma, so I can't do the things my brothers or father can. But I have a great memory and strong communication skills. I found his determination amusing, so I decided to keep him by my side. This time, I was moved by the initiative of your children, and that's why I'm here, to propose a partnership between our companies. Michael stared intently at the documents I handed him. Also, this photo reminded me of the past. What you did wasn't right, but I understand you've been going through a lot. We might not go back to catching beetles, but I hope we can return to a similar friendship. That's what I'd like to see. Hearing this, Michael lowered his head and replied in a faint voice. But this doesn't seem like it offers much benefit for you. If I only cared about benefits, my company wouldn't have grown into a global enterprise. I replied with a smile. While I once said I started my company on a whim, it wasn't as if I had no goals at all. I was in a language studies program, so I spent my student years interacting with people from all over the world. That's where the idea came from, to build an amazing company that could bring smiles to everyone across the globe. I even got involved in volunteer work. It didn't offer any financial benefits, but I gained something invaluable: connections, experiences, and intangible things that enriched my life. You're part of that too, Michael. At this, Michael, uncharacteristically for his age, began to cry, and his youngest son, my secretary, awkwardly tried to console him. He repeated his apologies and expressions of gratitude to us. Later, we launched a project leveraging Michael's company's unique expertise, eventually finalizing an agreement for a business partnership. Thanks to our secretary, Michael's youngest son, who reached out to former employees, many of them returned to the company. Looks like he's been doing a lot of thinking, Michael said. Probably because he knows his own strengths and used them to their fullest. Academic credentials and qualifications matter, but recognizing and capitalizing on your unique talents is another kind of ability. As a result, the company weathered its crisis, and Michael asked his youngest son to take over as CEO. However, his son declined, saying he felt indebted to me and wasn't suited for the role of CEO. Instead, he planned to identify a suitable successor from the talented individuals he had recruited, leaving Michael busier than ever. In the process, amid this flurry of activity, 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. One day, Sophia called with some exciting news. Dad, I've officially signed with a talent agency. Sophia had tirelessly pursued her music career while working part-time jobs and supporting her fiancé. Now, she had secured a contract with a major music agency and announced an upcoming tour of lighthouse performances. Not yet Budokan, but a big step forward. Her husband, Michael's second son Ryan, who had lost his sight, had been working hard alongside Sophia to adjust to daily life. Ryan has perfect pitch, Sophia said with pride. We're working together as a duo now. I'm the vocalist, and he writes and composes the songs. He's proving that even without sight, there's so much he can do. He's inspiring so many people with hope. With those words, she handed me a single flower, a gerbera, the same kind she had pressed and brought to our home, my office, and to Ryan's bedside. I think this flower represents the bond in our family, Dad. I'll keep working hand in hand with Ryan from now on. So please take care of yourself, focus on your health, and live a long, happy life with Mom. She said this with a radiant smile, like a flower blooming during the small wedding ceremony we held with only close friends and family. That day, smiles bloomed everywhere, making it a moment I would cherish for the rest of my life. Greg, who had just threw coffee on my son Marcus, laughed mockingly and remarked, "You and your son both look incompetent fools." The incredible scene that was playing out in front of me left me stunned. Who exactly is this man? Since I didn't want to think he was employed by Marcus's business, I said, "Which branch are you from?" "Make a quick call to the branch manager." He was standing there, not understanding, and I told him where I was. Greg's attitude completely changed when he realized that I was the chairman of a group of 20 companies, but it was too late. Greg was already doomed. He was already pale and stuttering as he tried to justify himself. Greg's wrongdoings were soon exposed in a series of revelations. The man was plunging into his own personal hell after strutting around so cockily. Simon Owens is my name. I am a 58-year-old man who is the company's chairman. With more than 20 group subsidiaries, it is a well-known stationery sales organization. Actually, only a few years ago, I was the company's president, but I resigned because a more qualified candidate was prepared to assume the position. To be honest, I did wish I could have held the job a bit longer, but there are obligations that come with being a leader that cannot be disregarded. My wife, Sarah, and son, Marcus, had frequently warned me, "You're working too much," and there was someone more suited for the position. For this reason, I resigned as president. My primary responsibility as chairman is to counsel and assist the business presidents. Others, however, don't necessarily perceive it that way. You're still working a lot even if you're taking it easy, aren't you? You could just retire completely and leave everything to Mr. Kennedy, the president, since you've already put in so much work. However, you continue to work, Dad. You truly enjoy your job, don't you? I'd appreciate how much Sarah and Marcus care about me, even though they frequently make fun of me in this way. This work ethic appears to have been passed down to my son Marcus. He is 38 years old and puts in a lot of effort every day in his branch office. Marcus lives in the country, so I can't readily visit him, but I'm concerned that he might be overworking himself. That's because our headquarters is in the city, where I work. But I'm excited to see him because I'll soon have the opportunity to visit his branch in my role as chairman. I'm curious about Marcus's recent performance at work. It was early May when the fresh greenery was at its most vibrant. I had returned to my rural hometown for the first time in a while. My parents, now in their 80s, are surprisingly energetic despite their age. "Simon, it's been a while. Don't overwork yourself too much, you hear," they warned me. That's right. If you do, Marcus will start copying you. I worry about him pushing himself too hard, even if he's got the stamina. Despite their words, they seem to be living fulfilling days, going for walks with neighbors and playing gateball. It seems that our family has a knack for producing people with a lot of stamina. The reason I came back to my hometown was to visit a nearby branch for an inspection. But since I was in the area, I decided to drop by and see my parents too. The inspection is scheduled for tomorrow, so today I plan to stay at my parents' house and tomorrow at Marcus's. After catching up with my parents about recent events, I spent a leisurely day at their house before heading to visit my son's home, which is located near my parents' place and was built just a few years ago. Unlike me, who enjoys working in the hustle and bustle of the city, my son seems to prefer living surrounded by nature. After becoming a working adult, Marcus built a house in our hometown and commutes to work from there. I'm pretty sure today's his day off, so he should be home. But just to be safe, I'll give him a call. Even though it's my son's house, I can't just walk in unannounced. Leaving my parents' house, I walked a short distance of about 10 minutes, muttering to myself along the way. Taking out my phone, I tried calling both his home and his cell, but he didn't answer. Maybe he was busy with something. When I arrived at his house, I saw Marcus getting into a car parked in front of the entrance. I called out to him in a loud voice, "Marcus, how have you been?" "Dad, what are you doing here?" Marcus stared at me in surprise, his face filled with confusion. I had told him a few days ago about the branch inspection and that I'd be coming back to the hometown, but it seemed he had completely forgotten. "Didn't I tell you? I mentioned I'd be coming back today." As we talked, it seemed Marcus finally remembered. "Oh right, was that today? Sorry. I've got plans now." He checked his watch with a slightly awkward expression. It was supposed to be his day off, but Marcus was dressed in a suit. Perhaps some urgent work had come up. Well, it can't be helped. I'll just wander around the area for a bit. Yeah, I should be back by evening. Sorry again. I wondered what he was heading off to do, but I decided not to pry and simply watched him leave. Marcus got into his car and quickly disappeared from my sight. His complexion looked a bit off. Was he really okay? Later, after wandering around the local area aimlessly, I headed back to Marcus's house, timing my visit to match his expected return. When he finally came home, he looked utterly exhausted. After being let into his house, I couldn't help but feel uneasy about his daily life as I took in the state of the room. Items were scattered everywhere, and there were piles of trash lying around. It seems like you haven't been cleaning much. There's dust piling up on the shelves, and your desk is covered with stationery. Have you been too busy with work? Seeing the pans and other supplies from our company carelessly tossed around filled me with a strange unease. Perhaps it was because I saw parallels between the products I nurtured and the son I had raised. Lost in thought, I barely noticed when Marcus changed into casual clothes. He traded his suit for an apron, and was now making a simple stir-fry. However, his movements were sluggish, clearly affected by fatigue. It's just been a bit hectic, but I'm fine. Anyway, I'm hungry, so I'll make dinner. You don't have to go out of your way. Wouldn't it be better to rest if you're this tired? I voiced my concern, but Marcus didn't stop cooking. It's fine, really. Besides, I've already started cooking, so if you don't stay for dinner, it'll go to waste. All right, if you insist. Reluctantly, I agreed and began tidying up the scattered items on the living room table. A few minutes later, I sat with Marcus, eating the freshly prepared stir-fry and rice while watching TV. How many years had it been since I last shared a meal with him? Even though we only exchanged casual conversation, I felt a deep joy reconnecting with my son after so long. Afterwards, I watched Marcus clear the table and do the dishes while I idly stared at the television. The news was covering an issue about harassment by superiors in the workplace. On the screen, a male expert with a serious expression was expressing concern for employees in vulnerable positions. When bosses make unreasonable demands, it can be incredibly hard for regular employees. Using power to harass subordinates is unacceptable. Ideally, employees should feel comfortable raising an SOS, but the more serious ones tend to internalize their struggles. As the words echoed from the TV, my eyes wandered to the untidy room, and then to Marcus's back. I couldn't help but wonder, was my son truly okay? Glancing at the corner of the room, my eyes fell on a calendar crammed with handwritten schedules. The next morning, dressed in a suit, I headed to the branch office. As chairman, I had a scheduled inspection today, something I had explained to Marcus in advance. Since it was a weekday, I had hoped to head to the office with him in the morning, but it seemed he was busy. Filled with anticipation, I woke up early, left my parents' house, and headed to Marcus's home, only to find that my son had already rushed out at the unusually early hour of 4:00 a.m. You have a spare key, right? Feel free to relax here while you wait, but don't forget to lock up when you leave. I recalled his pale complexion as he walked out the door. It seemed like he hadn't recovered from his exhaustion. Was the work at the branch really this demanding? I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling, but I knew I'd get answers once I saw things for myself. Carrying this lingering concern, I left Marcus's house a few hours later and headed toward the branch. When I arrived, I met with other employees outside the building and went over the day's agenda with them. I entered the 10-story branch office, ready to begin the inspection. However, I hadn't expected Ed, Mr. Kennedy from headquarters, along with his secretary, to join us. Originally, our schedules weren't supposed to align, but my secretary is excellent and managed to make it work, so I could join you for the tour. Though it was quite a hassle yesterday because of that. Mr. Kennedy, could you please stop throwing unexpected tasks at me? Ah, sorry about that. Mr. Kennedy, in his 40s and about a decade younger than me, is the kind of person who efficiently gives directions over his phone, even during brief breaks. He's probably always thinking about the company, working tirelessly, and with great dedication. I couldn't help but feel proud of him as my successor. His secretary, a young woman likely in her 20s, voiced complaints, but it didn't seem entirely genuine. It appeared that the two had a solid foundation of trust between them. As the tour began, I spoke to the secretary. I had planned to conduct this inspection quietly, but with this many people joining, we'll need to make sure we don't disrupt the employees at work. Moving around in a large group could unintentionally interfere with their work or cause unforeseen issues. We would need to be extra cautious. With that in mind, we walked through the branch office together. The branch manager was supposed to greet us, but he didn't show up, so we ended up touring the office on our own. The atmosphere inside the branch felt somewhat stifling, and everyone seemed extremely busy. What caught my attention amidst the activity were the numerous notices posted around the office. Messages like, outperform other companies, even by a little, or set higher goals than others, were all aimed at fueling competitiveness. At first glance, the notices seemed like a good idea, but the employees didn't appear to view them favorably. Some looked at them with annoyance, while others glared at them with resentment. Observing this, we decided to move from the first floor of the branch to the second floor. When I stood in front of the elevator, there was a sign that read, "Out of order." Since there was no other choice, we decided to use the stairs. For us, a group of older individuals, climbing stairs was quite exhausting. "May I take a short break? I injured my foot recently." To make matters worse, one person was moving slowly due to an injury. I couldn't let him move alone, so I decided to accompany him. We asked the others to go ahead while I supported him and climbed the stairs slowly, eventually reaching the second floor. Seeing that he was out of breath, I helped him to a bench nearby. I noticed a vending machine close by and bought 2 cans of coffee. I thought it might ease his mind if we didn't just sit there doing nothing. "I'm so sorry for causing trouble like this." "Don't worry about it. I'm getting older myself, and climbing stairs isn't exactly easy for me either." As we drank coffee and chatted to keep him from feeling overly apologetic, 2 employees walked past us. "You're absolutely useless. There's no one more incompetent than you. You're already worthless, so you should be working twice as hard as anyone else. Forget about taking the next day off." One of them, a man in his 50s, was shouting angrily at the other. The other person was my son, Marcus. Marcus apologized with an apologetic expression, saying, "I'm sorry," wondering what had happened. I called out to Marcus, "Marcus, what's going on?" Noticing me, Marcus looked surprised and exclaimed, "Dad, don't worry. It's just a small mistake at work. I'm fine." Even so, no parent can help but worry about their child. The man resting nearby glanced over at us with an awkward expression and spoke up. "Should I step away? I've rested enough, and my foot is fine now. You must be worried about your son. Are you really okay?" "I'm sorry, but please don't push yourself too hard," I replied. Understanding the situation, he thoughtfully left the area, looking back with concern. Though I was still a bit worried about Marcus, my attention quickly returned to him. Just as I was about to ask for more details, a man nearby let out a disgruntled remark. "Who the hell is this guy?" "That's my father," Marcus replied. "Simon and Dad, this is—" Before Marcus could finish introducing the man, his words were cut off. "Hi, I'm Greg." The man introduced himself with an air of arrogance. "So this old man is your father. I can see the resemblance." Greg sneered as he approached, reaching out toward me. He snatched the coffee from my hand and poured it over my son's head. "You and your son both look like incompetent fools." The sudden act of violence left my mind blank. It was an unbelievable sight. While my anger as a father burned inside me, as the chairman, I knew I couldn't ignore what had just happened. So I spoke to Greg directly. "Which branch are you from?" called the branch manager immediately. "What?" Greg responded, clearly confused. The reason I asked was simple. I couldn't bear the thought of someone like him working for our company. I hoped he was just a temporary worker from another branch. "Tell me the name of the branch where you work and the name of your branch manager." Acting all high and mighty. "What the hell are you even talking about?" Greg stared at me blankly, clearly not understanding the situation. It seemed he hadn't realized who I was. I cleared my throat and revealed my identity. "I am the chairman of this company, with a group of 20 companies under us. I don't expect you to recognize every executive's face. I won't fault you for not knowing me, but I cannot overlook harassment against our employees. So, will you tell me your branch manager's name?" I didn't particularly like emphasizing my position, but in this case, there was no other choice. I couldn't let Greg's action slide. When I explained this, his face turned pale. I had no idea you were Mr. Owens. Please forgive my rudeness." He bowed deeply, his voice trembling. Greg pulled out a handkerchief, perhaps intending to clean up Marcus, but I stopped him with a gesture. "Marcus, I'm sorry about the coffee. Are you all right?" At this point, Greg's attempts to show concern were meaningless. I didn't want him touching my son. "Please don't lay a hand on Marcus," I said firmly. I asked Marcus if there was a shower room nearby. When he nodded, I escorted him away to get cleaned up, leaving Greg behind. "Make sure to dry your hair thoroughly so you don't catch a cold." "I know, Dad. Do you have any idea how old I am?" Marcus chuckled lightly as he walked away. Greg left behind with an uncomfortable expression. Now, about my earlier question. I fixed Greg with a stern expression. Greg mumbled, his mouth moving wordlessly, but no coherent response came. "Greg, if you don't want to talk about yourself right now, that's fine. But in that case, I'd like to speak with the person in charge of this branch." "Where are they?" They were nowhere to be seen when we arrived. When I introduced myself at the reception desk earlier, I was told the branch manager was too busy to meet us. I'd assumed they were out handling urgent matters, but it seemed that wasn't the case. "Do they have some unmissable business elsewhere?" Greg hesitated, his eyes darting around before whispering in a barely audible voice. That would be me. "What? What did you just say?" I asked, taken aback. "I am the branch manager of this office," Greg said, confirming my suspicions. Hearing those words, I was so shocked that I couldn't find the right words to respond. A branch manager behaving this way, spewing such insults and pouring coffee on an employee's head. What on earth was going on with the working conditions at this branch? I suddenly felt a wave of anxiety. Greg, standing before me, hastily began making excuses. I heard the elevator was broken and thought it would be unacceptable to inconvenience Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Owens. I was confirming the situation with the maintenance staff when I happened to see Marcus and asked him about his progress. That's when things escalated. Given that one of our group members had a leg injury, addressing the elevator issue wasn't entirely wrong. But he had failed to manage his responsibilities while we were inspecting the first floor. As a branch manager, his competence was now in question. Not contacting us at all was already a significant mark against him. I don't want to be overly harsh about a single mistake, but this level of neglect from a branch manager warrants criticism, I said. I apologize. I should have come to address Chairman Owens immediately. However, this was not the only issue I needed to raise. His leadership skills were also highly questionable. I recalled the earlier scene with Marcus. Thankfully, the coffee wasn't too hot, but if it had been, Marcus could have been severely burned. Have you always treated employees this way? Such behavior is utterly unacceptable for someone in a leadership position. Greg trembled as he bowed his head. You're absolutely right. I deeply regret my actions and sincerely apologize. He loudly apologized to me, but I couldn't bring myself to trust his words. For now, I want you to focus on assisting Mr. Kennedy and the others. Don't worry about me, I instructed. Yes, sir, Greg replied after I gave my instructions. I watched as he hurriedly left the scene, clearly nervous. I then headed to find Marcus in the branch's shower room. Marcus had cleaned himself up and was now wearing one of the spare suits provided by the office. I borrowed a meeting room and spent several minutes speaking with him. During this conversation, I approached Marcus not as his father, but as the chairman of the company. Marcus, as chairman, I need to ask, what kind of harassment have you endured? There's no need to protect the branch manager sitting in a chair. Marcus looked down. Well. Marcus seemed hesitant to speak, his words faltering. Was he being threatened by Greg? Even if you've been silenced, I need you to have the courage to speak up for the sake of the company. When I said that, Marcus looked at me with an apologetic expression. It's not that. I just didn't want to make you worry, Dad. It seemed he had kept quiet out of concern for me. Perhaps this was the consequence of me prioritizing work and putting Marcus on the back burner. Marcus might not blame me for it, but that only made the guilt weigh heavier on me. Thinking back, even his behavior the day before had seemed strange. Maybe I should have pressed him further at that time. This is for the other employees too. Please, can you tell me what happened? I placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder and looked at him seriously. Finally, Marcus gave in, letting out a sigh of resignation before speaking. Greg has been forcing us to work long hours. Marcus then began to recount the various wrongdoings Greg had committed. It seemed Greg had imposed extremely unreasonable working conditions on the branch employees, routinely requiring them to work on their days off. Overtime was considered normal, and some employees even worked past midnight. In extreme cases, they couldn't go home and ended up sleeping at the office. Apparently, Marcus himself had stayed overnight at the office several times. They even told us we should be grateful for the rewarding work and didn't pay us for our overtime. That's a serious issue, I said. Yes, Marcus replied. On top of that, Greg would show up during our shifts, watching us closely and making comments, which caused many employees to develop severe stress and even breakdowns. The reason Marcus had been so busy on his day off recently was that he had been forced to work. Realizing this, I decided that Greg could no longer remain in his position. Once this inspection was over, I would need to speak with the HR department. For the time being, I discussed the situation when I met with President Kennedy and the executives on the top floor. They were outraged upon learning about the terrible conditions at the branch. I can't believe something like this has been happening in one of our branches, one of the executives exclaimed. This is unacceptable. Should we adjust our plans, Mr. Kennedy? Yes, we'll need to discuss this with HR. A grim fate awaited Greg, who had been guiding Mr. Kennedy and the executives around, but I felt no sympathy for him. He brought this upon himself. Greg would face an appropriate investigation and the consequences he deserved. However, before addressing that, there was someone else I needed to reprimand. After returning to Marcus's house together, I said, "Why didn't you tell me then?" Marcus looked at me with an apologetic expression and said, "Sorry, Dad. Even though you stepped down as president, you love working hard, don't you? I didn't want to trouble you. Besides, I thought I'd be fine since I'm still young and have the energy. Marcus is much more physically robust and healthier than I am. Perhaps he thought it wouldn't be a problem to push himself to some extent. However, even if you think you're fine, fatigue inevitably builds up. You've been looking pale both yesterday and today. If you push yourself too hard, it might be too late by the time your body gives out. It's important to rest before you feel overwhelmed. Don't forget that." "Yeah, okay, Dad," Marcus replied. After I firmly spoke to him, Marcus reflected on his actions and began preparing dinner with a dejected demeanor. However, given everything that had happened during the day, I decided to cook instead. Hearing about the situation, my parents brought over a large amount of prepared dishes, which was a great help. That evening, we had dinner together at Marcus's house, the first time in a long while that we were all together. Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa brought coffee too. Do you want some? Sure, I'll have some, but I'll make it myself. You just sit there and eat your meal. The atmosphere in the living room was still somewhat subdued after the day's events, but a news report on TV lightened the mood slightly. It covered a story about employees at another company who had suffered harassment from their boss, but had found the courage to stand up against it, hoping their situation would improve. I felt my resolve strengthen. I decided to do everything in my power to improve the working conditions at this branch. I stayed in the area for another 2 days before returning home. Since it coincided with a holiday, I planned to use the time to relax a little. During that time, I even came up with an idea for a new product, reminding me how important rest truly is. However, an unpleasant incident occurred during my stay. For 2 consecutive days, Greg had been loitering around Marcus's house. Despite being clearly warned by Mr. Kennedy and me to stay away from Marcus, he came to see him in an attempt to protect himself. Apparently, he had been trying to silence other employees to prevent them from revealing more about his actions. Please, Marcus, don't say anything more. I don't want Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Owens to get the wrong idea. Greg, who had come to Marcus's house, said this while bowing his head. Since I was staying at the house, I immediately understood what was happening and scolded him sharply. It seems our warnings fell on deaf ears. If you continue acting as you please, shall I call the police? Mr. Owens, I had no idea you were still here. I'm terribly sorry. Realizing he had crossed the line, Greg stopped coming to Marcus's house. But caution was still necessary. I told Marcus to call me immediately if anything happened. As expected, Greg's dismissal was soon finalized. It seemed he had lost the will to show up at the branch and remained at home, leaving the handover of responsibilities incomplete. This caused some destruction at the branch, although the employees had to deal with the aftermath. The atmosphere seemed brighter, likely because they were relieved by Greg's departure. Sometime later, Greg reportedly returned to the branch, looking displeased as he gathered his personal belongings. If I hadn't poured coffee on Marcus that day, I could have stayed as branch manager. He reportedly muttered these words. But I couldn't agree with his sentiment. Greg lacked the ability to lead a branch. Even if I hadn't been present that day, it was only a matter of time before he would have been demoted or dismissed as his misconduct came to light. Simply dismissing him wasn't enough, so a detailed investigation into Greg's actions was conducted. It was revealed that his excessive demands on subordinates stemmed from his vanity. Don't let those rival companies beat us. Don't make me look bad. If you fail, I'll be the one laughed at. He had often said things like this to his employees. Apparently, he had been ridiculed by another group's branch manager for poor performance, which drove him to try and forcibly improve his branch's results. The competitive notices I had seen plastered around the office were likely a result of this pressure. After his dismissal, Greg quickly sought a new job. Thanks to connections within his family, he managed to find another position swiftly, but he couldn't shake off his arrogant behavior. As a former branch manager, recognized as an overbearing newcomer at his new workplace, he was disliked by other employees and quit within a month. I saw him in town the other day. He looked gaunt and was walking with a defeated expression. Marcus said this during one of our phone conversations. On the other hand, it seems that without Greg, the branch employees are now thriving. Marcus mentioned that he has been able to properly rest on his days off. Getting a good night's sleep has cleared my head. I hadn't felt this refreshed in ages. I've realized how important proper breaks are. You were right, Dad, Marcus added. Knowing that he is working healthfully every day is a great relief. The employees who had been stifled under Greg's management are now performing better than ever, and the branch's sales figures have improved. I'm glad the workplace has become an environment where they can work without hesitation. Going forward, I must ensure that no second Greg emerges by closely monitoring the education of those in leadership positions. As chairman, I will continue to do what I can while keeping a watchful eye to ensure employees like Marcus aren't pushing themselves too hard. When those two are there, the mood always feels rustic, even though the event is incredibly lovely. It's hilarious that they attended our wedding, as you mentioned. They didn't appear to understand that farmers shouldn't attend such an extravagant wedding. It's really frustrating dealing with people from the countryside because common sense doesn't seem to apply. Hey, after the wedding is over, you know what to do, right? Oh, you're not required to keep up any family relationships or anything. I'm relieved about that. It's a pain to phone them frequently, and I don't want to visit their far-off and filthy home. I'm grateful that you said that. We must avoid them at this time, or they may beg us to help them in their later years or to lend them money. It is best to get started right away. It's amazing you can say such harsh things. Yeah, I can't stand dealing with those old guys who don't understand common sense. With 1,200 guests, my older brother Scene, who is rapidly achieving success, hosted a wedding. He and his wife disparage my parents, even on such a happy day. The true nature of my son and his wife is unknown to my parents. I therefore made the decision to reveal to them my brother's couple's actual nature. Henry. Mary. When did you arrive here? When my brother and his wife discovered my parents were behind them, they naturally became very alarmed. Although the plan went smoothly, the true test is about to begin. Time to leave, everyone. My brother was confused when my father, who is always quiet, suddenly started laughing. It appears that my brother is still unaware that my father's words are already pointing him in the direction of doom. I'm 27-year-old Lucia. I work for a broad corporation in the Human Resources Department. Both my mother and father are rural farmers. I was always taken aback by the disparities in lifestyle when I moved to the city for college. In no way am I mocking country living. My mother, Mary, and father, Henry, were both good-hearted and diligent. Up until my college graduation, they had a sizable field. Their farm has shrunk, and they are now in their 60s. In addition, neighbors live near in the country, and I now see that it was a nice place for kids to grow up. I never felt constrained since it made genuine connections with individuals possible. But seeing my older brother seemed to perceive things differently than I did. I can finally escape from the countryside full of fields. He left home while I was in middle school, just as he was starting college, and he is 5 years older than me. I was filled with nostalgia when I left my house, but my brother seemed eager to get out of there as quickly as possible, even if it was only for a day. He appeared happier when he was allowed to leave home than when he passed the college entrance exam, as I still recall. I actually like the countryside, though. I think the countryside smell of dad and mom suits you, but I'm different from you. I'm used to my brother's condescending remarks, so I don't feel anything no matter what he says. My brother is exceptionally talented, and he got into a top-tier university. In comparison, my academic performance is just average. It's almost natural for the older sibling to look down on the younger, less capable one. Also, he acted like a good kid in front of our parents. Dad, it's Sunday tomorrow, so I'll help with the farm work. You don't have to do that. But isn't farm work tough? We have plenty of part-time workers, so it's fine. I see. Well, if you ever need help, just let me know. Knowing my brother's true nature, I learned that this is what they call getting along with others. Furthermore, my parents, who were unaware of their son's true nature, often boasted about him to others outside of the house. Even though neither Mary nor I are very bright, I can't believe someone as smart as Scene was born. Do they say things like, even a crow can give birth to a hawk in situations like this? Even my usually quiet father becomes slightly more talkative when it comes to bragging about his son. When I was a child, I used to snicker when I heard my parents boasting about my brother to others. I was the only one who knew Scene's true nature, but I didn't tell my parents. I thought they wouldn't believe me because they were in such a state. Also, our parents rarely directly praised their son, and they never ignored me just because I wasn't as good as him. So I thought it was fine as it was. Well, sometimes it's essential to give up, and there are times when it's better not to know. I probably realized that without even realizing it. Scene, who had become a college student, seemed to be enjoying his newfound freedom. Like a bird that had been locked in a small cage for so long, but was now soaring in the open sky. On his social media, there were photos of him having fun with friends, mixed with snapshots of him with different women. These women change regularly. If these women were his girlfriends, then it meant he was changing girlfriends about every 3 months. My successful brother seemed to be quite the ladies' man. After graduating from college, my brother got a job at a bank. With his intelligence and social skills, which he had honed since childhood, he excelled at work, earned good evaluations, and was on a fast track to becoming an elite banker. The elite gentleman rarely contacted me or my parents after he started working, and he stopped coming back home altogether. Hello, Lucia. Haven't you heard from Sean? He hasn't contacted me at all. He never calls or shows his face, and I wonder how he's doing. Have you tried calling him? I occasionally try, but he never picks up. He must be really busy with work. It had been about 3 years since my brother last contacted us. Even his last contact was just by chance when he happened to answer a call from our mother. I couldn't believe that he couldn't spare a moment to make a single phone call in 3 years, no matter how busy he was, despite being an elite banker. But our parents, who were unaware of my brother's true nature, believed that he was working hard. After hanging up the phone with my mother, I let out a small sigh. A few days after the call with my mother, she called me again. Lucia, there was a call from Sean. He actually called you. Is something wrong? He's apparently getting married. What? Sean is getting married? Upon hearing that my brother was getting married, I unintentionally raised my voice louder than I had in a long time. He and his fiancée are coming over next month to meet us. Can you come home, Lucia? I'll try to make it if I can. Great. I understand. Please let me know. After hanging up the phone, I recalled my brother's condescending attitude towards me. However, my brother had been in the workforce for 10 years since becoming an adult and was now 32 years old. It was different from the time I was thinking about. Could it be that he had become a bit more mature in character since then? In any case, marriage is a joyous occasion. I decided to go back home to convey my congratulations to my brother at the wedding meeting. During the wedding meeting, I would be surprised to find that Sean not only hadn't changed since his student days, but had also powered up since then. On the day of the wedding meeting, he and his fiancée returned to our parents' home for the first time in 3 years. I, who had returned the previous night, welcomed them at the entrance along with my mother. Welcome. The journey must have been long and tiring. No, not at all. It's so peaceful and lovely here, Maya replied. Sean's fiancée, Mila, was 1 year older than me and had a distinctly urban vibe. To someone like me, who was accustomed to country life, her smile seemed to shine brightly. Her manner of speaking was polite. However, although her expression was smiling and her tone was gentle, I couldn't help but feel that there was something behind her eyes that wasn't smiling. After a brief greeting at the entrance, my mother and I led Sean and Mila into the living room. Wait, where's Dad? When we entered the living room, my father was nowhere to be seen, so my brother was surprised and looked at my mother. He's in the nearby field right now. I'll call him right away. Mila, I'm sorry for making you wait. No worries. There's no rest for farm work. Sean and Mila sat down on the cushions, and my mother went to the field to call my father. I sat in front of them and became their conversation partner until our father arrived. With our parents absent, Sean reverted to his usual self. Even though I told him we were coming for the wedding meeting, he's doing farm work. What did I tell you? In the countryside, common sense doesn't apply. You're right. Your mother's just in her usual clothes, too. We dressed up, and we look like fools. Dad will come in his work clothes, all covered in dirt, I bet. Don't laugh when you see him. That's just not possible, right? If I were told that in advance, I might have laughed instead. You're underestimating the countryside. He's definitely coming all dirty. Do they not realize I'm sitting right in front of them? When my mother left, the two of them started bad-mouthing my parents. It seemed like Sean's personality hadn't changed a bit. Moreover, his fiancée, Mela, seemed to have a similar personality to his. Thinking about it, as if I had two brothers, I felt a dull headache or a sense of heaviness in my head. Furthermore, instead of becoming more mature in character over the 10 years since he became an adult, it seemed like my brother's thinking had taken a turn for the worse in the city, and he had powered up. He used to look down on me, but he never looked down on our parents until now. I might be fine with him looking down on me since I'm not that capable, but I couldn't tolerate him speaking ill of the parents who raised us. Hey, Sean, don't speak ill of Dad and Mom like that. Ha ha. You've become quite the talker, haven't you? When we were kids, you could only stay quiet no matter what I said. You work in HR at a small company, right, Lucia? You are quite different from Sean. Huh. It seems they noticed me, and that's a relief. By addressing me, the target of their bad-mouthing shifted from my parents to me. The two of them, who looked down on me, seemed to be having quite a bit of fun. After a while, we heard footsteps coming from the hallway. Sean and Mila quickly put on light smiles, stopped bad-mouthing me, and prepared for our parents' entrance. Sorry for the wait. No worries. Thank you for taking time off work. Seeing my father in his work attire, my brother's fiancée went from a gentle smile to slightly narrowing her eyes and raising the corners of her mouth. Sean, who seemed to have sensed something, nudged his fiancée with his elbow to keep it from being noticed by my parents. We're sorry for keeping you waiting. It's totally fine. We were chatting with Lucia. Oh? What were you talking about? They were actually laughing about your attire for today's wedding meeting. It's just so out of place. I relayed the conversation to my parents as a subtle resistance against my brother. I knew that something like this could be easily brushed off. I knew that he could easily brush off something like this. Come on, I didn't say it like that, did I? I just told Mila not to worry about how Dad and Mom are dressed because they'll be working on the farm. I said that so Mila doesn't think she's not welcome, you know. And also, Dad and Mom should make a bit more effort since it's a wedding speech. Do I look bad? Well, maybe you have a point there. I apologize for our lack of consideration, Mila. We've been living in the countryside for so long, and we're used to going about at our own pace. No, it's okay. I'm actually happy that you're just being yourselves. While Sean had been joking and bad-mouthing his parents earlier, he unintentionally created a situation where his parents had to apologize. Furthermore, his fiancée promptly supported my mother's apology, even gaining a favorable impression from my parents. I had resisted them with small acts of defiance in the past, but I had never succeeded. Once again, I felt that I couldn't measure up to the two of them and resigned myself to sipping my tea. However, Sean's actions didn't stop there. Lucia, why did you say it like that? Dad and Mom might misunderstand, you know. Stop, Sean. We're here for the wedding meeting today, right? I see. Lucia probably got a little jealous, thinking that her big brother was being taken by Mila, I guess. Is that so? Lucia is cute, isn't she? With this, I became the villain, and Sean and Mila were seen as forgiving and kind people. Overwhelmed by a sense of defeat, I drank my tea even though I wasn't thirsty. Unable to say anything as the villain, I watched the conversation between the couple and our parents continue without me. As I impatiently glanced at the clock on the wall, my brother approached me with a request. "Oh, what?" I had something I wanted to ask Lucia. "What is it?" I replied coldly, like a sulking child. However, he continued without being shaken. "We're planning to have a grand wedding with as many people attending as possible. But there might be people who can't come due to various reasons, like the venue being far away or having children. So we're thinking of having the wedding online. And since you work in HR, you probably handle job interviews online, right? I think it would be smoother for you to handle various things than for us to do it. So you want me to handle the online part of the wedding. What's this about online?" Our parents, who didn't know about online weddings, had a question mark floating above their heads. Since they didn't even touch computers, I thought it couldn't be helped. It's about making sure people can watch your wedding on their computers. That way, even people who can't come to the venue can watch your wedding from anywhere in the country. Isn't that the same as a video? It's not recording. It's live streaming, like a live broadcast of a baseball game. That sounds great. Scene's wedding will be broadcasted all over the country. Not everyone in the country could watch the wedding video, but it seemed like my parents had a general understanding of the online wedding. They were quite enthusiastic, thinking that they could show off their son on this special occasion to many people. "Could you do us a favor? We have other preparations to take care of, and we don't need a gift from you. Please, we're begging you." Scene and Mila bowed their heads to me. Honestly, I didn't want to help with their wedding. However, I had become the villain due to the issue with our parents' clothing. Now, Scene and Mila were bowing to me while our parents were appealing to me with their expressions. If I refused here, I would be even more of a villain. I understand. But if you want to make it grand, and there are many people who can't attend, don't you think it will be a lot of work for each person to set up online? Even young job seekers sometimes have trouble with connections. Is there a better way? Setting up connections for each person would be difficult, so how about renting a meeting room where you can also have meals? You can make it like a public viewing. Finding a suitable place might be a bit of a hassle, but rental meeting rooms have video conferencing equipment. And if you choose a cheap one, it won't cost more than $200 a day. All right, let's go with that. Just as expected from the HR department, you can rely on Lucia. Then can you tell me the approximate locations of people who can't come to the wedding and the contact information of the wedding planner in charge? I'll take care of the rest. Scene quickly agreed to my proposal. Indeed, my brother was an elite. And so, unwillingly, I ended up helping with his wedding. As for the meals prepared at the online wedding venue, is it okay to lower the quality? The number of participants is increasing rapidly, you know. Just as I feared. Once people know they can watch the wedding from anywhere, this is it. People with promising futures are different. I won't lower the quality. I said I wanted grand, right? The number of venues has increased to 10. Is that fine? Yay. If we're going to do it, let's go all out and accept everyone. It'll be more exciting that way. Besides, with so many participants, we can expect some generous gifts, so we should be able to recover some of the wedding expenses, right? Scene, and I began to have frequent discussions about the wedding over the phone. My brother, being an elite banker with a good income, was excited about the wedding, expecting a large number of attendees and generous gifts. As for the wedding itself, even small changes in food and items could easily add up to tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, causing significant financial fluctuations. His sense of money had become skewed, and he started disregarding the budget. While it might have been a good idea to caution him as a family member, he was convinced it was for the best, so I decided to let it go. As the date of my brother's wedding approached, I visited the venue and had them set up a computer at their home to check how the wedding would look and feel online. How does it look? We have cameras set up in the front capturing the whole scene, and we also have 3 additional cameras for close-ups. As for microphones, we've placed them at your seats, around the MC, and scattered throughout the venue. To make it clear for the participants, we've labeled the microphones with easy-to-read tags. Please be mindful not to share embarrassing stories around the microphones. Well, it's a wedding, so you should be careful with your words regardless of the microphones. Also, we've marked the positions of the cameras for your convenience. That's fine. It feels like a celebrity wedding, doesn't it? The venue can hold up to 300 people, and with the online setup, it's on par with a celebrity-level event. Well, it's my wedding, so it should be at this scale. Lucia, you should be grateful to me. You wouldn't have had the chance to be involved in such a glamorous wedding if it weren't for me, with your rural background and all. Sure, you're right. For now, we can have a conversation, but on the actual day, you won't be able to hear the participants. Instead, they can leave comments, so check them after the ceremony. Well then, I'm going to talk to the equipment team over there for a moment, so just wait here. I felt stressed by my brother's usual condescending remarks and moved away from the camera. Why do I have to do something like this for my brother's sake, even on my day off? As I sighed with annoyance, I overheard my brother and his wife's conversation through the earphones that I had left on. Even though it's such a splendid wedding, your parents won't ruin the atmosphere, will they? You know, they wouldn't dare come in casual clothes to a wedding like this, right? I can say that with certainty. We should tell them and also be mindful of their behavior during the ceremony. That's true. I'm worried they might eat messily or say something tactless to the other guests. I hope they have some accident on the day of the wedding, and we only find out about it 3 days later. Ha! It would be nice if something like that happened. To be honest, would your parents, who live in a rural farmhouse, really come to something this extravagant? If it were them, I'd probably join from some online venue to avoid making such a mistake. They're coming because they're from a rural background. They live in the countryside, so common sense doesn't apply to them. The camera wasn't capturing their faces, but the audio was still connected. Unaware of this, Scene and Mela began speaking ill of my parents again. I clenched my teeth and felt anger rise within me as I listened to them badmouthing my parents. But in the next moment, I realized something. With this newfound knowledge, I might be able to show Scene and Mila a painful lesson. Instead of frustration, I felt confident and let out a snort. On the day of the wedding, the venue, with a capacity for 300 people, was almost full. The ceremony was glamorous, and above all, Mila's dress was beautiful. If I didn't know her inner self, I would surely offer my heartfelt blessings. I half-heartedly applauded several times. The ceremony proceeded smoothly, and Scene and Mila began to visit the tables of the participants. For the management of the online wedding, I had arranged my seat near the equipment staff at the venue. Some might think it's unnecessary to treat a family member's wedding like this, but I found it more relaxing this way. Sorry for making you handle the online management during the wedding. Well, we don't need a gift, and since you can enjoy the food, there's no complaint, right? Yes, you're right. No complaints here. So, how many people are currently participating online? We have 10 venues, and each has around 80 to 100 people. Additionally, there are about 20 individuals connecting from their homes. With nearly 300 people at the venue, that means around 1,200 people are participating in our wedding online. Nice, just as I expected. Close to 1,000 people participated in the online wedding. Although their images were projected in a corner of the venue, the screens were divided into dozens, making it clear that many people were present, but their faces were too small to see clearly. They were highly satisfied with having over 1,000 participants. However, there was one thing my brother and his wife were dissatisfied with. Even though it's such a great wedding, the atmosphere still feels rural where they are. My parents' seats were far away, and I was the only one here, so Sean and Mela started speaking ill of my parents again. The fact that their parents had raised them and allowed them to have such a wedding didn't seem to register with them. I tapped my ear lightly with my index finger. As you said, it's unbelievable. They actually came all the way from the farm, and they still don't seem to get that this extravagant wedding is out of place for them. Seriously, rural folks just don't seem to grasp common sense. It's frustrating. Hey, you know what we'll do after the wedding, right? Yay, we don't have to bother with keeping up family ties. Great. I don't want to visit their distant and dirty house, and regular phone calls are a hassle. So it's a relief that you feel the same way. We'd be in trouble if they start asking for help in their old age or demanding money. We need to create some distance from now on. How can you say such harsh things? I can't believe we have to deal with those clueless old folks. Once again, I began to worry if they couldn't see me. Lucia, let's be real. You're never going to catch someone like me, a perfect human being. So just stay single for life. Take care of Dad and Mom instead of me, okay? I felt relieved that they could see me now. There were so many things I wanted to say, but it seemed it wasn't my turn. You won't have to take care of us, so don't worry. The venue was bustling with activity, but my brother and I could clearly hear our father's familiar voice. His voice came from behind, and Sean turned around at lightning speed. Suddenly, her husband turned around, and Mila followed suit, both looking surprised. Henry. Mary, when did you get here? When he told Lucia to stay single for life and take care of us instead of her perfect brother. Upon hearing my mother's words, Sean and Mila exchanged glances. Their teamwork was impressive, and I thought they were compatible as a couple. Perhaps it sounded wrong, but there was context to our conversation. Lucia said she probably couldn't get married, so we talked about the possibility of her staying single and taking care of Dad and Mom instead of me. That's right. If you misunderstood it, we apologize. Besides, it's so noisy here. We'd welcome living together, you know. Sean and Mila lied effortlessly. Up until now, my parents would have believed their words. However, their lies no longer held any sway. But before that, you were talking about how you wondered if we could even come as rural folks and that people from the countryside lacked common sense, right? Were you listening from an earlier point in the conversation? You tricked us. Don't say unkind things. We were asked when we got here, so we just answered that it was a little while ago. We didn't lie. Then why did our conversation? My father remained silent, turning his face to the side. He had wireless earphones in his ears. I can't believe it. My brother turned around at lightning speed again, this time looking at me with a triumphant smile. I pointed to the computer I was using to manage the information for the online wedding right in front of me. You picked up the sound with that computer and sent it to Dad and Mom's earphones, didn't you? That's right. So all of your conversation from earlier was completely exposed. When I tapped my ear during the conversation with my brother, it wasn't because my ear hurt. It was a signal to my parents, who were in a distant location, to put on their earphones. With my signal, my parents put on their earphones, and they heard every word of the conversation between their son and his wife. Now, no excuse would work. I'm sorry for making you do something strange, Dad. Mom. It's okay. When we heard that audio... Well, audio. What are you talking about? Oh, didn't we do a test for the online wedding the other day? It's the conversation from back then. They were saying things like you guys would ruin the atmosphere and that it would be nice if you had an accident to prevent you from coming to the ceremony. You recorded that conversation. Yes, more accurately, I recorded the video to check the image quality and angles. Later, when I moved away from the camera, that's when you two started that conversation, and it got captured in the video. In the eyes of our parents, my brother was a respectable person, and no matter how much I talked about his true nature, they wouldn't believe me. So I decided to let them hear that audio first. However, even after that, it seemed that our parents still couldn't believe it. That's why, with this earphone strategy, I wanted them to see my brother's true nature firsthand, right before their eyes. We've been tricked all along. Lucia, haven't we hurt you too? We're sorry. Dad and Mom aren't to blame, you know. You never really showed favoritism towards Sean, It's just that he was good at lying and acting. My brother, whose true nature had been revealed to our parents, couldn't make any excuses. For the first time, he failed to evade responsibility. In his panic from the unfamiliar situation, he made a mistake in his next move. Dad and Mom have been delighted with my lies and acting all along, haven't they? You must have thought I was a good son, right? So you should be grateful. That's right. Sean is an elite banker. That's why 1,200 people are celebrating our wedding like this. You two are out of place at this ceremony, yet you actually came all the way from the farm. It's so laughable. C and Mila changed their strategy. They realized there was no way out and began openly insulting my parents. They probably aimed to sever ties with their parents, avoid taking care of them in their old age, and eliminate the hassle of dealing with relatives. Their mistake wasn't in deciding to cut ties with their parents at this point. It was in speaking it out loud. Ha! That's right. We're totally out of place at this wedding. We're usually reserved and quiet. My father began laughing loudly, making my brother feel terrified. He hunched down slightly and leaned towards his wife. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today for my son. But he turned out to be such a despicable person. I apologize. We will formally apologize later. So for today, everyone, let's leave from here. Upon his words, the participants of the ceremony, who had been displayed on the projector, all left simultaneously. The participants at the venue couldn't hear our conversation, so the commotion caused by the online participants leaving grew louder. What's going on? Why are the participants leaving? Why are the participants leaving? The confused Sean and Mila couldn't understand the situation and were in a state of panic. Ignoring the two, my father left the area and headed toward the entrance of the venue, with my mother following him. On their way out of the venue, it seemed our father was asked about what had happened by an acquaintance as he stopped for a moment to talk to someone. However, after a few minutes, the conversation ended, and our parents walked away again, leaving the venue. As people who heard the story told others, and those others talked to even more people, the situation quickly spread throughout the venue. Participants who learned the circumstances began leaving one after another. Hey, what's going on? Tell me. Didn't I explain this before? There are microphones installed all over the venue, and those microphones don't necessarily mean handheld or lapel mics. No way. Yeah, to save on the number of microphones, the conversations around here were picked up by the microphone on this computer which manages the online wedding. The microphone's performance isn't great, but since it's a place with equipment, and I'm the only family member here, it wasn't necessary to prepare good microphones. And I didn't need to indicate the microphone's location. I thought we didn't need to prepare fancy microphones or signs to indicate the microphone positions. So you mean our conversation was heard by the online participants? I told you before, right? To avoid embarrassing conversations at the wedding. And since everyone left at Dad's command, I think they already understand the fact that 1,200 people attended this wedding isn't because you're an elite. Dad just went overboard and gathered people. When our father heard about the online wedding, he thought he could show off his son's triumphant moment to many people. Therefore, before fully understanding how online weddings worked, he promoted it heavily to his acquaintances. He used to run a pretty large farm in the countryside and had been doing it on the same land for a long time. As a result, he had a wide network in local government organizations and even companies. So when he excitedly talked about his son's wedding, many people who were associated with him felt obligated to attend their wedding. And now he said they should leave, so the participants followed his words and left the online wedding. Among the 300 participants at the venue, there were many who attended because they were the father's friends, and many of them, knowing the situation, left as well. Shan, too, had been too excited about his wedding and had been accommodating to the increasing number of participants. Being on the fast track to success as an elite, he thought that if he held an online wedding, Even people with distant relationships would join. He expected around 1,000 people to attend. However, hardly anyone attended to genuinely celebrate the wedding. People were leaving both from the venue and online. Everyone, where are you going? Today is my wedding. Why didn't you come to celebrate us? Shan didn't have the energy to stop the people leaving and collapsed onto his knees. His wife, although not speaking, stood still and continued to shed tears. In the end, there were only 40 participants left at the venue and only 4 online. This was the number of participants at the brother's wedding after subtracting the father's influence. With this number, there was no need to manage the online part anymore. I'm going home too. The food was delicious, but despite having eaten, I didn't feel full. It's a common occurrence when you're not used to a fancy meal. So I decided to take out some beef bowl and soup on my way home. As a result of the extravagant wedding, the expenses amounted to $150,000. In contrast, the online wedding with its simple cuisine and minimal favors didn't cost much. However, preparing a venue for 300 people and hosting an online event for over 1,000 participants still led to significant expenses, even after cutting costs wherever possible. Shan had hopes of receiving congratulatory gifts from the over 1,000 attendees, and he seemed to think that if he could cover about 50,000 of the 150,000 himself, it would be sufficient. I believe covering a third of the wedding expenses is quite admirable. However, the brother didn't end up paying just that, because our father got angry with him and left. The congratulatory gifts didn't come through, and as a result, they had to cover almost the entire cost themselves. Paying $150,000 is tough for a man of the age of 32, even if he was an elite. Mila had quit her job, relying on the income of her elite husband. But as soon as the wedding was over, she started looking for a job again. Chan, on the other hand, had to work hard to make ends meet despite having quit his job during the wedding. Among the 40 people who remained at the venue and the 4 who stayed online, it seemed that some were his colleagues. Therefore, what happened at the wedding quickly spread to his workplace. Witnessing such disgrace and unable to continue working, he left the prestigious bank where he was on a fast track. He started looking for a new job immediately, but with his track record reset, he fell off the elite path and found himself on a more ordinary career track. Consequently, his income decreased significantly, and he had to work tirelessly to cover the expenses of the grand wedding. This is a consequence of his arrogance and his attempt to get married without a trace of gratitude towards his parents. After paying that amount, I hope he lives with the right attitude, showing gratitude to his parents and without becoming conceited. After the wedding, my father went around apologizing to the people involved. It might have seemed like both our father and the others had a terrible time because of his son, but apparently that wasn't the case. My father had always been quiet, and he was seen as intimidating by those around him. However, after this incident, it seems that he started talking to people more and even laughing loudly or apologizing for his mistakes. I don't know if this was the trigger, but since Sean's wedding, my father has become more sociable and has started laughing more often. My life went back to normal with no significant changes. However, knowing that I won't be looked down upon by Sean anymore, I find that quite pleasing.